Okay, I think we're live now. Good morning, everybody. I think it's just about morning. A little bit later than I initially planned. It's a bit of a tired night last night, so I thought I'd wait till I'd woken up before I got going. Okay, this morning I'm going to finish the eye. So yesterday was focusing on the eyeball itself and the iris, and today I'm going to look at the outer lids, a little bit of the hair and fur texture around the eye, which would start to make it look a little bit can't speak, see what I'm saying about being tired, a little bit less odd. Just want to tidy up a couple of little, I've got the wrong pencil there. Tidy up a couple of little areas. Although the eye itself was, the lower lid's a little flat there, it just looked a little bit strange, so I just want to make it a little bit more curved. There we go. I just want to put a little bit more depth. It's amazing how much you see differently when you go away from something and then come back to it. It's definitely something I'd recommend doing if you get a little bit stuck with what I'm just blending a little bit more there. I can just see a few pencil lines I don't really want to see. I'm just going to soften that area. There you go. I'm just flicking backwards and forwards, checking in with the reference, just to make sure I've got it right and I haven't got too much. Looking really quickly at working away can really help as well. If there's something not quite right about it, can help it jump out at you. Also, looking at it in a mirror, turning it upside down, that can also sometimes really help you see what area is not quite working, not quite right. That's okay. Right, and I just want to go in and sharp black. Just going to sharpen the black again. So it's really, really pointed. Just going to put in a few little extra black areas between the hairs so they really start to stand out. That hair's gone a bit wonky there. You can just, and if the hairs are well, you can just you know, by drawing around them, make them look a little bit finer. There's quite a few different ways of creating little hairs like this, and sometimes all of them in one go. I just want to make that top line a little sharper, so the reflection sort of behind the eyelashes, because they're so pale. Okay, and then I would just, with the grey, again, no, wrong pencil, grey, oh, that was the right pencil. Okay, just want to go over the top of some of these again, just to make them a little bit more solid. Now, white Pastelmat is probably the one that's hardest to do. On the dark grey, it's very easy. I don't know why particularly why there's a difference, but it's very easy to get the white hair showing on top of the dark. The white Pastelmat, though, for some reason just isn't quite as good at it. So I'm just going to do a little bit too much through that brown, and then I'll go back and take it back a little bit and just show you how I do that way. So we'll get onto the rest of the eye at some point. These things are jumping out at me, so I'll fix them while I'm. And there's some little short hairs up there. Just going to get the mid grey. That's a cold grey 3, and just pop in some shadows behind. So it really is, there's no 100% certain process. You just get, you know, 5 steps and it's always going to be done. It's always going to be a matter of backwards and forwards, fiddling with this and that till you can get it looking as you like. I know when I started out, many moons ago, trying to teach myself to paint, I thought I was missing a trick and there was something I should be doing to make it always work 100% of the time, and it's really not the case. Sometimes it works without you even thinking about it, and other times you can spend hours and it really just doesn't want to play. So that's it. So just drawing a few little hairs out. Like in the reference, the eyelashes, although they're there, they're not really, you know, it's not the first thing you look at when you see this eye. It's more this highlight, and then these golden areas below, and I just want to sharpen that line. So with Pastelmat, as you'll see when I start to do the outer lids, the first few layers look very, very grainy, and you don't think you're ever going to get the ability to put the real fine detail. But the more layers you put on, the more the detail starts to be easier to apply. So hi Paul Jones. So Stuart, what pencils and paper do I use? So this is Strathmore 400 series vellum. No, it's not. That's the other drawing. This is white Pastelmat. See, I told you I was tired. This is white Pastelmat, and I'm using Polychromos mainly. This is a Polychromos. It's just in a pencil holder because it's very tiny. Excuse me. Polychromos, Derwent Lightfast. We've got, I think, a Pablo or two, Caran Pablos, and I think I might have a. No, I don't think I've got any luminance that I pulled out, but I do use luminance as well. I'll tend to start a drawing rather than just have every single colour for every single set around me. I go through and I pull out the main colours that I think I'm going to need, and then watch yesterday, I'll see it, but I'll show you this again because it's normally quite helpful. And then with the colours I've picked out, I create a little chart. This doesn't mean this is the only colours I'll allow myself, or that I'm definitely going to use all of them, but it just gives me a quick visual for what's in my tray of pencils, and if I'm looking for a grey, I can see whether I want a colder mid-grey or whatever really quickly. And it takes a little bit more time obviously to set up, but I find this really saves time while I'm working, because I'm not continually diving into like the 1,000 pencils I've got, okay, which exact colour do I need, and scribbling on a separate bit of paper. It just, that little bit of planning helps me to be more productive when I actually get going, and doesn't interrupt the flow of the drawing. So that's something that I share with people who teach my workshops, and normally I think feedback has been, it's been really helpful. So, and I know quite a few other artists do that sort of thing as well. But it's something, if you didn't know about, you may decide to have a little go with, and it might work for you. Okay, so I'm sort of happy with the eye right now, eye itself, and I'm going to start to look at the eyelids. And now particular horse has not got a lot of actual fur or hair. It's just black skin with tiny little bits of hair. Excuse me. So it's going to be quite dark, but there's a lot of shine and a lot of reflection on it, which would be really nice to recreate. Excuse me, just getting warmer in here, take the cardi off. So I'm just going to map it out to begin with. I'm looking for, let's just go with the cold grey 3. This is a little bit of a mid-tone, but I'm just going to make sure all my lines are in the right place. Just very light pressure. Now it's going to look rough. Get past the first few layers look really rough. You can see all that texture of the paper coming through, and that's fine. It's exactly how it should be. If you're expecting actually not to lose that texture straight off, you're going to have to press really, really hard, and then you're not going to be able to apply any other layers. So I'm just putting almost like a colour wash across. I'm just going to concentrate on the actual lids themselves. I'm not going to go out. It's a really nice light colour wash. So with my pencil, there's hardly any pressure. It's just enough to pop a bit of pigment on the paper, and I'm just applying. I'm not scrubbing backwards and forwards, although it looks like it. Just applying, I'll do it slowly, more slowly. Just applying colour with the downstroke, if that makes sense. And that gives me a little bit more control than just like randomly going backwards and forwards. I'm just going to fade it out to the edges, so it has like a soft effect. There you go. So, and as well, you're sort of like just setting the tone of your drawing, the colour of your drawing. You're also just starting to fill the tooth in a little bit, and then that allows you to eventually, when you've got enough layers in, to start put those really lovely details on. There we go. And it's not a quick process, as you can see. Oh, let me just see, there's some coming up. Pastelmat paper, yes, it has about 12 different colours. So there's lots of choice. They have like 6 lights and 6 darks. My personal preferences are I like the white and also the dark grey. It's probably more of a taupey sort of neutral colour. It's absolutely great for animal portraits. It really doesn't add any tone as underneath the drawing. I quite like the light blue and the light grey as well. They're quite useful. Don't personally tend to go for the more colourful ones or the really dark papers. They don't really attract me, but I've seen some beautiful work other people have done on them. So it's just a matter of personal preference, really. So the beauty of art is what we want. There's no rule. And you can buy, if you're in the UK, I don't know if they ship abroad, but the SAA, they actually sell sample packs, so you can, very cheap, for about £15, I think you get a sheet of each colour, and they do like a light pack and a dark pack, and the sheets are about A4, so you can actually work on them. They're not just tiny little samples that are no use. So that's if you really want to just try Pastelmat and see if it's for you, then I'd recommend doing that, and that's I think it's www.saa.co.uk, and I don't get commissioned, so don't worry. It's just a useful thing to know. So just putting a really light wash, and it looks really grainy. I'm not sure quite how much you're seeing on the probably is showing just about. So it's just a real wash of colour. Fading it in. So being accurate with your pencil pressures helps. As sort of as I get further to the edges, I get lighter and lighter. And getting that control of your pencil is so important, more than knowing which colour to use or whatever. Just really being able to vary the pressure, and then you can vary the values. You get subtle blends between your colours. So it's something I'll do some. I'll schedule some of these in next week, and I'll do some of the little exercises that I get people doing at the start of my workshops, because they're always really helpful, and it gives you a point of reference as well. So when someone talks about pencil pressure, you've got a feel more for what they mean. And for me to say light pressure, that means something to one person and something completely different to someone else. So just having a little point of reference is really useful, so you'll know what we're talking about. So when I say light, you know what I mean by light. I think this is, for me, this has come from, I mean, I used to work predominantly in graphite, so, and that's all about values and pencil pressure. There's no colour involved, so it's something for me that comes quite naturally. So I've always drawn in graphite since I was a child. It was just pencils are easy to get hold of, aren't they? And not expensive. So, oh blob. So as well, I quite often get asked, how do I keep my, if I can get hold of some, paper so clean? Basically, a little bit of putty rubber or, oh god, dog hair's in it now, that's not good. Or scotch tape, magic tape, and you can just dab across. And you see the little bits of dust, or Pastelmat is a nightmare for grabbing everything that flies near it. And I just dab it across and pick up the grubby bits. And it doesn't matter so much if you're going to fill the whole of your drawing. But quite a lot of people like to have a white background, and it does look quite striking and contemporary. So, as I say, I'm just going to focus on this part at the moment. So you just dab across, and every time I see it starts to look grubby or I see a little bit of dust, I will just dab it off. I don't wait till the end and then clean it up. Invariably then you'll end up, the pigment that's landed on there, that'll end up smudging it and making a bit of a horrible mess, and then you've got this lovely drawing with a big blodge next to it, which is a bit of a nightmare. Okay, so I've got that light grey down. Ooh, what am I doing? So I'm just checking there's no comments, that's good. And I'm gonna start building up some of the values and the tones, but with the same colour. This is a real mid-tone. It's not really light and it's not really dark. I'm just paying attention. Again, it's still really, really rough. And if you notice, that we can see probably just about, there's sort of an angle worn on the pencil. So I keep turning every few strokes, and that just keeps the sharp point against the paper, so you're not putting all your pencils into your sharpener in the effort to keep the point sharp. You're actually getting most of it into the paper, hopefully. And Pastelmat does a little bit more than your smooth papers, but if you're careful and you're light with them, then not too much. And you sort of get used to it after a while, you just realise that's how much you use. You can see how much texture there is and just how many layers you could potentially put down. And I love the layering. I love being able to underpaint with different colours and seeing all the huge number of colours sort of just shining through, because colour pencil is translucent. It's not an opaque medium, so whatever you put down first will appear through, and that has its pros and cons. Obviously, the pros are you make these beautiful, beautiful blends that really sort of like shine with light and life, and the cons are you can't really put light colours massively over dark. It's not too bad, but you need to maybe change to another pencil or something. So here are some creases in the wrinkles in the skin. So I'm just blending up from the wrinkles, so they're not large, they're almost created by the shadow rather than drawing a line as a wrinkle. Does that make sense? So I'm just blending that up, controlling my pencil pressure, and it goes darker as it comes into this crease here. This will be really dark. So this is really early stages, and because we're doing it really lightly, if we go wrong, we can amend it. Excuse me, frog in the throat there. Remember to talk because I get absorbed and then I forget what I'm doing. Building, and it's all pretty rough at the moment. But there's, you know, it's already starting to have a little bit of a shape that you're going to end up with. And that's quite a dark area there, so I can just go straight over the top. And I'm just blending in with the edges there. And that's going to be the really strong shadow wrinkle there. And again, blend up from the top. Or up from the bottom, I should say. Words right. We'll be adding lots more colour on top of this. And this is quite, you know, apart from the iris, this is quite monotone. There's not a huge amount of other colours in there. But this is also where you can it and you can start to bring in some navies and blues and all sorts to play with your colours if you want to. As far as realism goes, if you get your value right, the colours don't matter so much. You can actually put some really interesting colour combinations, and it still looks real. The eye still reads it as real, or the brain still reads it as real, rather than getting overly worried about the colours and worrying because you haven't got enough pencils. Well, just use what you have and worry about your values and your form. Again, this is all pretty rough at the moment. It's not going to, you know, this is definitely goes through ugly stages, and I think people can get a little bit despondent because it doesn't automatically look like the end result. But that's just the way it is, and the more you do, the more you'll get confident that this is just part of the process, and it's just going to look a bit funny for a while. So I can draw this knowing what's going to happen next, and knowing it's going to all come out in the wash. Okay, that's the darkest area. Okay, we'll just do the bottom. And you don't need to use any blending mediums like a blending pencil or OMS on this, because the layering does the job for you. That's not to say I never ever use them, but it's very rare. I've had a few nightmares with OMS, bleeding outside the drawing and stuff, so I'm a little bit wary. But sometimes there's just a tiny little piece that I think just needs a little bit of help. I just want the overall finish to be a bit smoother. I might use a tiny amount, very sparingly. Let's building up. Already we're getting the shape, you know, by putting in the values, the lights and the darks rather than colour. This is just cold grey 3. The shape of the eye is starting to appear, the eyelids. You realise how wrinkly horses' eyes are. There's another deep shadow here. And also, like, my pencil is reasonably blunt now. There's a lot of pigment there, but the point isn't particularly sharp. But because I keep turning it, I managed to keep that enough of a point against the paper to get the pigment down the way I want it. That's good. It'll get a bit more exciting in a minute, I'm sure. Okay. And if you don't, you know, if you're just dropping in or you want to come back later, this will be available on my Facebook page to look at, so you don't need to miss anything if you don't want to. There we go. I'll just the whole time, obviously you can't see me, but I'm just flicking backwards and forwards to my reference, really noticing where, I'll just have a little bit of hair down here, or tone down here. There we go. See how much form you can create with just one colour. You don't need a huge amount of colours. We'll just go through building them slowly. Okay, and this area is really dark. There's another sort of through there. And eyes are fab projects. If you're just sort of like learning a medium, whatever medium you're learning, they you've got this, usually the smoothness of the eye, so you're looking at reflections and blends. You want the colours to really flow together nicely. You've got your wrinkles and creases around the eye itself, and also the fur and hair texture with most breeds. There isn't much on this one, but something like a tiger eye or a dog eye or something is a really good project to give yourself if you're learning. And they're not huge as well, like you can do them in a few hours, so if it all goes wrong you don't feel like you've wasted a week or getting stuck, and it just builds your confidence and gets you to really understand how the medium works. As most efficiently as possible. Okay. Good. So that's sort of looking how I want it. Just going to put a little bit down there. So if I was doing this out on my own, I'd probably go on and complete the hair and whatever above and below, but that will take a much longer, so I will crack on with the next step for the inner lids. I think that'll be most helpful. Okay, so that's the first layer of values, and you're just creating, it's a neutral colour, it's a mid-tone. Built the layers a little bit more on the darker areas, but I've also left them lighter on the lighter areas. So you're just building the form and the shape and making it start to look a little bit more 3D. And using a mid-tone, using a colour that's sort of in the middle of the tonal range, so it's not as light as the lightest and it's not as dark as the darkest. So the next step, just looking at my reference, it's pretty monotone. It hasn't got a lot of hair. I think I will now put in some of the darks. So I'm going to go to cold grey. Where are we? If we can find it. There we go. There's the cold grey 6. And that's quite a jump in tone, but I think we're going to be fine. Again, if we blend. I'm just looking at... See, this layer's looking a little smoother as it goes down? That's because we're starting to feel the tooth a bit more. It's certainly not going to be the darkest layer, but it's again just see. As far as capturing all the little details, it's really personal preference and how much, you know, do you want to make it photoreal, in which case you'll do every tiny little pore and hair, or do you just want to give the idea of the eye? Let me just grab a pencil holder for that one. Okay, just Just makes it easier to keep my hand out of the frame if I've got a hold on. Okay, some dark in here. That's the inner. See, if I want more tone built up, rather than pressing harder, I'm just putting more layers down, and that preserves the tooth. So even though you're filling it, it's still there. If I press really hard, that's gonna flatten it, and then you get to the point that you can't add any more pencil, and it gets too slick and shiny. So if you're gonna push and get that real shine appearing, you want to make sure you are at the end of when you want to apply your pencil. See, you just start to making sure it's even, looking back, noticing where the darkest points are. You know, there are so many different ways of working. You can, you know, just focus on a little area and put all the colours in one go, or you can cover more. Yeah, there's a little, that bit there's a bit lighter, and there's another darker line down there, and that's darker in that bit there. Okay, it's all starting to take shape already, and you'll find there's a certain point at which it all starts to come together and look as you imagined it should. It does take a little while sometimes. Again, just blending, pencil pressure out. Sometimes you find little bits that really don't want to fill with pigment, so you can just use the end of your pencil and pop that in. Fill that back in. I do tend to jump around a little bit. See something that needs doing, go and fill it. Again, that's strong dark coming through there. That particular wrinkle. And then it gets a little bit lighter. I think with working with smoother papers, you tend to have to go dark, but with Pastelmat, you don't really need to do that quite so much. If there's any area I want really white, then I'll preserve that, and I'll wait. I won't expect the white pencils to cover it exactly, but you have a lot more flexibility with Pastelmat as to the order of the values you put on, the colours you put on. So it's quite forgiving in that sense. If you have the patience for all the layering, then it's a fantastic paper, but I realise not everybody really wants it. But yeah, it took me about 4 or 5 drawings before I really clicked at how good it was, because I wasn't getting, to begin with, I wasn't layering enough, so I couldn't get the detail that I was getting. It just looked a bit rough. Couldn't get the detail I was getting on my smoother papers. But I liked, there were aspects of it I really liked, so I just kept trying and trying, and one day I just obviously just put a little bit more effort into it, spent a little bit longer, and it just all went, now I get it, now I know why it's such a useful tool. But I still like working on the smooth papers, and the horse that I've done lives on this week, that's on Strathmore Vellum, which is a pretty smooth paper. A little bit of texture, the vellum part. That's quite, but different to Pastelmat, a lot smoother than. And there are so many different ways of doing this. I think whatever you prefer, you'll find, your natural way of drawing is, you'll find a way of working with pencils. They're such a versatile medium. gonna do along here and then put some more darks in just so you can see how it builds up. It's not too samey when you're watching. Oops, don't drop your pencil down your board. That's not a good plan. Okay, so just checking backwards and forwards that reference. Where are the deep shadows? Okay, that's that really big wrinkle there. Fold in the skin, it's under the brow bone. Okay. A little bit more along there. Going to put a little bit more along the inner side, and you start to see it all start to pull together as you're working. And feel free to ask questions as you go. It's I'm quite happy to answer. It's me waffling on too much. There we go. I'll just put that bit in there, it's a little bit darker. Across the top, and then I'll do the underneath afterwards. I just wanted to get one area a little bit more complete. So I've created quite a decent amount of value there and form with the lights and the darks, which is about there. The next part, I just want a bit more of a blend, so I'm going to go back to Cold Grey 3. And just lightly glaze. I've got a really sharp point and I'm almost using the side of the pencil. I'm just going to glaze over the top. You see how that's just softening and blending it all in? So you get a smoother finish. So working better on the areas where there are more layers, but that's fine because we've got more lighter stuff to put on top and more darker as well. But I'm just going to do this round this area in the upper eyelid. Just going to blend it out. Again, really sharp point on this. And this can sometimes, if your works are a bit flat and you want to add a bit of colour, then using a glaze of a different colour can, if you're not putting a huge amount of pigment down, but it's enough to be sort of subtly noticeable. And it's sort of the same idea as if you're glazing and you're doing oils or acrylics or something like that. Really fine wash of colour over the whole surface. It has the added benefit of colour pencil of just softening and blending, getting rid of some of that toothy texture if you don't want it. You see how that's working? See, especially at the top, you can just see how it make it all smooth together and just take it out. So you can make these as, you know, I'm just going to stick with the greys, I think, maybe put some other browns in as well, but you can make this as, you know, make this a really gorgeous bluey type effect if you wanted to. Play with things a little bit. And I really like sort of using complementary as well in my work. I've got something orange, I'll stick in some blue and what have you. It can be really small little dots of the complementary, but it just really makes the colours sing and brings them all to life. So I'm going to go to the Cold Grey 1. Oh, the pencil extender on. Ooh, what am I doing? And just blend out again. This is the palest, the greys, taking it out. To really soften the edges. And then again over here. So don't expect anything massively to change when I'm just glazing this way. Just want it to look a little softer and blended. Keep that there. Good, that's the top lid. Okay. That's looking quite, so then I'm going to go to my, I'm going to go brown. So this is a dark sepia. And I'm going to start adding even more darks. There we go, and blend it right in to the edge of the eye. There we go, that shadow in there really dark. Just layering. Getting them into it all works together. Just accentuating those wrinkles, creases at the front of the eye. And I think the order, if I'm working Pastelmat, I tend to build my values with a mid-tone first. You know, whatever colour is appropriate to the drawings. Then I'll go and put in my darks. And every now and again I'll blaze as I glaze, which is what I'm talking about. I'll glaze as I go to soften everything. And then as a final piece I'll put my highlights in and then sort of look at it and evaluate it as to what it needs more, or if it needs more, whether it needs a bit more dark or a bit more light or another slash of colour or something. As far as having a particular approach, but I say every drawing can be a little bit different. There's no 100% set way, and every single artist who draws will use things in a different way. So if this is completely different to what you've been taught, don't worry. It doesn't mean what you've been taught is wrong or that this is wrong, it's just different. I think the more experience you get with different methods, the more you start to create your own style and find out what works for you and the way you see things. There's room for so many different ways of working. I think it's really rather wonderful that we're all stuck at home for the most part. Even if we're able to go out to work, we're still not the freedoms we're used to, and it's really good to be able to connect this way. Social media is actually having some benefits at the moment. Ooh, I'm going down the bottom, shouldn't do. Staying on the top. So see, as I start to add values, the eye and the eyelids are looking more coherent, rather than there's a weird grey splodge around that funny looking round thing in the middle. It starts to look like an eye. So I've done a lot of these, so I'm looking weird, it doesn't throw me. Quite often it will look a bit odd until I've completely finished. But it's easy to feel a bit despondent and like you want to give up if your work's just looking a little bit odd halfway through. Sometimes that's just how it is, and whoever was drawing it, it would look a little bit odd. So getting a, you know, seeing people draw, they're doing things like this, and there's a lot, you know, there's so much about at the moment. There's loads of different artists doing it, which is absolutely fantastic. I need to go and have a look at some. You can get so many different ideas for your own work. I just thought, wow, I'd never ever thought of doing it like that. And it might be that little piece that really jumps you up to the next level or something. Because we're always learning, you know, no matter what we've achieved or done. I don't think it ever actually changes. You ever never feel like you've achieved it. You're finished, you've learnt it all. There's always new things to learn, new ways to work and things to discover. I think that's really starting to look more as it should. Textures and things. And if, you know, I find as well, obviously I'm not doing hair here, but I will do some fur texture as well on another one. The real texture is the last bit you add. What we want to talk about or want to draw first when we're starting out, because that's what we see, that's the top layer. But it's finding how to see it almost in layers. Draw your base and then your middle and then your top. Again, just doing some tutorials, you know, watching other people work can really help you. Develop. No, don't do the bottom, do the top. Itching to do the whole thing, but it will just makes it all very samey when I'm just doing the same thing all around. Right, okay, so that's looking a lot more coherent. I think I might put this one that's like beigey colour, so I think I'm going to go for, this is I've got a warm grey 3, which is quite a nice neutral, and I'm just going to, oops, molting hair, just going to pop that over the lighter areas, just where there's a bit of light hitting at the edges as well. It's more of a natural colour as far as the horses go, although they do blue black at times. Blend that in. You can see how that blends with just very light pressure. I'm not pushing it together at all. These coloured pencils don't blend the way a pastel would blend, for example, in physically pushing the pigments together on the paper. It's the layering that does it. Obviously there are things like OMS, odorless mineral solvents, spirits, whichever one it is, and blending pencils which essentially dissolve the binder and push the pigments together, but they're not something I feel I really have need for by doing it this way. Okay, so that's all blendy. And I'm going to go for, I'm actually going to put some black in the deepest, because this is quite black here. I think this is black down there. So try and use black relatively sparingly, because you can't really go any darker than that. So once you've gone to that point, that's it. do the whole thing in black, then there's nowhere to add in those real extra dark, there's nowhere to add extra dark points. But I don't avoid black. It's so that's, I'm just evaluating the whole time. So if you're struggling to see the box and the lights are the you know, what we call the values, tonal values of the piece, you can actually maybe photocopy your reference so you get it in black and white, or if you've got a smartphone or a tablet, take the colour out of the photo, and then you'll really see those, and all you have then is tonal values. There's no colour there at all, so it'll really show you where to put the depth, and getting those values right will give you depth to your drawing. There's more just there. Really help it come together. It's very black. There's that very inner line across the eye. Curves up around there. It's very black. There we go. Just push the base of the eyelashes. Starts to make the eyelashes look a bit more real. A few little textury bits, and I'm going to add some highlights as well. Yeah, that shadow needs across there. You can see how much stronger it's starting to look. You get those values right and it suddenly goes, ooh, and starts to wink at you. Okay. So this would be available on my Facebook page, so it will be here when you need it. I'll put some texture in a moment. I'm just looking backwards and forwards, and that needs a little bit. The inner corner is really quite dark, so I'm going to push in a bit more black there. Okay. And then this outer corner here, the light's reflecting off it slightly. I just have to move around a bit to see it properly. Yeah, there's a camera in my way for some strange reason. It does take a little bit of getting used to having something right on top of your board. There we go. Blend that all in. There. And I'd obviously repeat the same thing below. But it's let me get that. What's the darkest brown? That one. The pencil's so short, it's hard telling which one's which. Cold Grey 6, that's what I was looking for. So I'm just blending the whole time, getting that smooth effect. I'm going to go for my, this is Warm Grey 1. I'll start to add in a few little highlights, so there's a little bit of highlight here. Actually, I'm just going to sharpen that control over that point. There we go. The upper edge of the wrinkle. I've been sort of leaving off pigment. is where it's sort of just blend it lightly to get a soft effect. Out there, grabbing lots of dust at the moment. Again, the wrinkles down the corner of the eye. Again, this is just softening at the top here. There's a little bit of a highlighty thing going on there. And then on the actual upper eyelid, I'll bring this forward. With loads of texture, pores of the hair, and there. So going on that way. And if you can see how I can quite effectively cover the darks here, it's really handy. And I'm just going to go, so it's just blending. So I would, you know, could take it all the way out to the edge, but just to show you how this works, it's easier. You can just stick to the eye itself. And then as a final highlight, then I'm just going to get a bit of white. It's not going to look white particularly. And now I'm pressing a little bit more firmly. You really want to push that pigment into the pattern. It's just sparingly, so where are the really lightest areas? I just want to show a curve more. And across here, there's a line across there. So pay attention as well to the shape of your highlights, curves, shadows, so you haven't got a round eyeball and a flat eyelid. And actually, talking about shape, that's somebody's just yelled at me that it's not quite right. That was just a little bit triangular there. Just going to curve it round again. Just putting a little bit more highlight on there. Highlights will help bring something forward, and the shadows will push it away, obviously, and then it looks more curved. And the eyelashes are pretty pale in the drawing, but just add a little bit of white on top, just to bring some of them forward a little bit more. It's time to go there. Right, so I think I'm just going to quickly go through the bottom as well. I think I'll go 3. Actually, let's go for Coral Grey 6. Oh, glad you're enjoying it, Pauline. And you sort of find once you're in one area, and well, I do anyway, and you've sort of worked out your process for that particular way the fur looks or the hair's lying, you can speed up. I normally find when I start a drawing, the first part takes me forever, and then once I click it to do, it all really just flows really quite easily. Pigment there. So this is a line, but it's not a real, it's not like a fold. So the fold I want a really sharp edge to along here, because the hair's, you know, the skin's obviously folded back on itself. This is more of a crease, so I don't want it to be as harsh. So you know, accuracy is good, but you don't have to be 100%. If you were to like lay, you know, put this on acetate or something and lay it over loads of things that are out, it's not about creating perfection in copying something. you know, finding what do you like about that reference piece, what really makes you feel excited and want to draw it. Or it might be the colours, the shape, you know, the animal itself or the subject itself has some real meaning for you. And it's that connection with your piece that is important, not so much can I copy this exactly. And why, when I'm doing, you know, when I'm doing pet portraits, I like to know a little bit about the animal. What's, you know, how were they cheeky or lazy or what have you. That, you know, that emotional feeling between the animal and their owner is really important. It gives you a little sense of what you're drawing, and if you can meet the animal, all the better. I think that's why I like drawing horses so much. They have so much meaning for me. I've always loved horses. Been around horses. So when I'm wanting to getting a smooth finish, I tend to just use a little circular motion and just pushing the line in and then blending it a bit softer. And the more you do this, the more natural it will become, and it will just, you won't even think about what you're doing. It will just be you're just drawing and getting lost in it. It's quite a challenge for me to talk, you know, to actually describe what I'm doing, because it is, doing it for so long, it becomes really automatic. So in some ways, you know, starting to teach, although I've taught in other areas, this has been really good for my development, because it's made me really analyse what I do and why I do it, rather than just thinking, well, I'll just draw it, don't I? It doesn't really help. But no, the whole learning and is quite a fascinating process. So here I'm just looking at the darker areas in the reference. I'm just building up. So I'm not pushing harder to make the grey darker. I'm just building more layers. Building tone that way. So if I push harder, I flatten the tooth of the paper, and then you're stuck. You can't add any more to it. You get a sort of, excuse me, a slick, shiny effect. Actually, this part is going a little better in terms of how it's going to look at the end, and that's often the way, you know, it's the first bit is a bit, you know, just getting to know you drawing, and then suddenly it's okay, now we're mates, let's crack on. Okay, it's actually going on a lot more quickly than the top part. So I won't draw the whole thing in. Okay, it's a bit darker up here. Blending it out. Good. Right, I'm just going to go over with the warm grey to put a bit of blend into those. Glazing here, just a really sharp point, just to fill a little bit of the tooth, blends it, adds a little bit of colour without really overdoing it. You can see how textured that paper is, it hasn't any pigment on yet. I quite like it when drawings blend out that way. Let's go for your darkest brown, which is somewhere here on my drawing board, dark sepia. add in some of the dark areas here. So although I want to try and keep the real black for that top crease, so if I can get enough depth with this, then I won't add any more to it. And if not, you know, what I'll normally do is get to a point and then put it to one side and go and do something else, and then come back and look at it with fresh eyes, rather than keep going and going and going. And just because I think I should be spending or should be finishing it, it's often better to walk away and have a little think. And your brain knows more than we give it credit for, I'm sure, because we'll come back in and go, oh yeah, it just needs a bit of this or a bit of that. Or at least you can see where it's off and give you an idea of what needs to do. And it's quite a sharp line it's got there. That's just a little bit darker up here. And there's a shadow. So I'm not automatically putting the real darks along the whole of that crease, just in certain areas where the hitting. I think I might on my own time just do the whole of the eye. For now, I'll just finish this lower lid. Good. And then we'll get the cold grey 3 rather. Just want to blend in with a bit more of a blue across there. Blue. Just going to put a little bit of blue, not much, a couple of areas, and it can just bring it all to life. Oh. And then highlights. Haha, Gainer, hello. So there's way more highlighted areas on this bottom. Again, I'm pushing in quite hard. Just to really push that pigment in. And if you overdo it, just glaze over with it. Don't worry. This is quite textured. And here, you can see the pores of the skin. There's a bit of moisture in the corner of the eye. It's another strong highlight at this back part here. And these here are all highlighted. There we go. There's a few little speckles of highlight around there. Again, just adding in a bit more there. If you get to a point where you think actually this area is, I've put the white pencil but it's not actually white enough, a trick to do is to actually darken the areas around it, and it will make it look whiter. So I am actually going to use the black pencil couple of points just to really darken them. Oh, I can see the shadows are quite dark, so just draw that out slightly. There you go, and I just want to crisp up that line. That's why I need new glasses. And a little bit more around here. Through here. There we go. And just a little bit under here, I think. Some more texture. fiddle away with this for ages, just adding in and playing with it, and invariably that's what I tend to do with my work. That needs to be darker. Too much highlight there. So yeah, this is what I love about Pastelmat. You can really it's a dark sepia, really add and subtract lights and darks the whole time. You're not sort of stuck. As long as you're light with your layers, you've got a lot of flexibility. And I think when I used to use smooth papers predominantly, I'd find I'd get to the end of a drawing and think, values are a little bit out, I really want to add something here, and I actually physically can't because the paper's full. Because I don't have that problem with, I'm just going to glaze over this a little bit just to soften the effect slightly. I'm using the warm grey 3, let's give a little bit more warmth to it. There. See, fiddling. Just soften those little bits. So I'm checking my reference. I'm also just checking it as it is, you know, standalone. Does it look like an eye? I think it needs to have more hair around it ultimately, and I as well, but hopefully that just gives you an idea of how the Pastelmat works for this particular subject. A few more ideas to go and play with. There we go. Have I ever used Fabriano Artistico? Yes, I have. I used to use it quite a lot at the beginning. I found for my way of working, I used to end up ruining the surface because I put so many layers down. It didn't quite work for me, although it is a great paper and people do produce some amazing things on it. It's not quite right for me. It's and the artists I see doing beautiful work on it, they don't tend to don't seem to layer quite as much. They do layer, obviously we all layer, but I really do. I mean, this is, I'm still going to keep working on this. This isn't finished by any stretch. I do just like the option to be able to just keep going and going and going until I really get the depth and the finish that I like. As you can see, I can't leave it alone. I just want to keep fiddling. But yeah, I mean, Fabriano, I would definitely recommend it as a paper to try. I think Bethany Veer uses it. Alan Willett uses uses it. It's what's her name? Can't think of her name now. Jess Lennox. Yeah, she uses it as well. So it's great. It's certainly a good quality paper. Up there. Okay, now I'm fiddling. Now I need to go and leave it alone and then come back and maybe do the bottom half of the eye and the top half of the eye, and so it looks a little bit more settled in. But good. I hope that gives you some ideas about how to use Pastelmat and coloured pencil and startings of an eye, and I will crack on and get the rest finished this afternoon at some point. We're going to have a cup of tea now. Well, thank you all. I really appreciate it. And I will do some more of these next week, possibly something over the weekend, and I'll post times and things on my Facebook page as before. Alright, thank you very much. Goodbye.